Hi, I'm Bill Atkinson, president of Atkinson Strategic Communications, a Baltimore public relations firm. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with entrepreneur and angel investor Leo Liu. In 2015, when Leo was 21, he co-founded a company called P.I.D. It's a luxury home builder focused on Silicon Valley. He has grown the business, which is based in San Ramon, California, to about $20 million operation. Leo is also an angel investor focused on medtech, technology, media, and the telecom sector. And then finally, he's also working on completing his MBA at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. Welcome to Citybiz, Leo. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Bill. It is certainly an honor to be here, and I'm excited to share the story about myself.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one. Tell me about coming to the United States. How old were you, and where did you live? How did you survive?
All right. So I came to US in 2009 and enrolled in high school as a freshman. My original goal for coming to the US was for education. I was living with a host family and eventually moved out when I turned 18. Obviously, at that time, my parents supported me financially, and I was able to survive by myself, fortunately. I would say the two biggest challenges for me at that time was, number one, the language barrier, and number two, the culture differences. I could speak some English at that time. However, I still had quite a hard time understanding teachers and classmates, especially if they speak very fast. But after about 6 months, I was able to speak English pretty fluently, mainly because I talk to people all the time. So that might have speed up the learning process a bit. It took me a bit longer to get used to the culture differences, but I eventually did.
So at 21, you start your own business, 6PID, and you're building luxury homes. How has that business performed?
So I would like to give a little background story. My parents had this consistent plan developed for my two older brothers and I, which is we would go abroad and acquire a degree, then work for a large corporation for a few years. And then finally, we would help out in the family business. Both of my brothers, they followed the plan flawlessly. I, on the other hand, turned out to be an outlier, sort of a rebellious child. Actually, prior to 2015, I have already been helping my father out. I was overseeing commercial interior constructions and managing properties in the Bay Area, mainly collecting rent and interests from loans. Since my father at that time did not have a reliable team of agents in the US, and he doesn't speak English himself. So certainly through that early experience, my ambition and confidence grew. I was able to, pick up some basic game rules and develop some fundamental business skills. Therefore, in 2015, I finally asked my father, well, Dad, can I borrow some money from you to start a small real estate company myself? I was actually quite surprised when my father accepted my proposal. That's how I borrowed the initial capital I needed to start the company. But my father did charge me a pretty high interest rate, in my opinion, which is 8%. I think my father did want to encourage my entrepreneur mindset because he started his business from scratch as well. However, perhaps he didn't think this startup would be successful. Also, I guess deep down, he still wanted me to focus on education. And this startup will certainly takes my time and energy away from my schoolwork. Therefore, I believe this high interest rate served two purposes. Number one, of course, is to mitigate the risk for the assets. Number two is to help me understand that entrepreneurship is not as easy as it sounds. However, perhaps to his surprise, my business did survive And as of this year, we completed 10 projects so far. The growth has been steady, and I am very optimistic about the future.
Yeah, and the houses you're building, they're really looking at Silicon Valley, buyers in Silicon Valley. So this is not a $200,000 home or $250 home. You're talking multiple millions of dollars with these homes.
Yes, our properties, the price of our properties typically range from, I say 2.5 million to 6 million.
So what were the biggest challenges that you faced early on? I mean, you're 21 years old when you started this company.
I'd say the number one challenge that I faced, especially in the early stage of my company, was certainly my father's high interest rate. Because real estate development is a project by project based, time sensitive, and capital intensive business. Unlike let's say a pharmaceutical company, where once you completed the development of your new drug or medical device, your product will start to generate revenue for you every year for quite a while. However, for real estate development, let's assume that we work on one development at a time. Once we complete and sell that project, for the next one, we basically need to start all over again from land or property acquisition to maybe selecting contractors. And while we are spending time looking for new land or assembling new team, the interest is still ticking. So if we don't have a very good back-to-back business cycle, or if we're unable to secure a land or a property quickly, that 8% interest could be very dangerous to the business. In addition to that, no matter how thorough we plan for our projects, there are always unexpected delays. We basically accepted the fact that unpredicted problems are just unavoidable, unfortunately. Sometimes, they have nothing to do with us. For example, a city inspector that was supposed to inspect our property could, get into a car accident and get injured. And then we would need to reschedule with the city again. A material supplier could send us the wrong material or something with the wrong size, which happens all the time. And we would have to wait for the next delivery to continue the construction. So unfortunately, creditors are not going to call me and explain to me, don't worry, Leo, we understand there's an unexpected problem or delay, and we will excuse you for 1 to 2 months of interest. That's just not going to happen. In this case, the creditor is my father. Nonetheless, the interest, will continue to roll, and it can eat away our profit very, very swiftly. And the second challenge I would like to talk about is the contractors. We received our general contractor license in 2019 and built a decent network of subcontractors by now. However, prior to that, we had to rely heavily on general contractors to build homes. When we happened to select a not so decent general contractor, we would typically be in a world of pain. The issues, there are just so many different issues I can list. They vary from multiple change orders to snowballing the budget to failing city inspections, and most importantly, a huge delay for the project timeline. We had to micromanage a few projects because of that, and those experiences were certainly very, very stressful. And I still feel very fortunate to be able to pull through. The biggest loophole, in this is if you decide to fire your contractor in the middle of a development, no one else would want to take over. And those that are willing eventually typically charge a huge premium. So if the reality is, if we're not able to secure a reliable contractor or properly manage the contractor, a profitable project can very quickly turn into a total disaster.
So in a nutshell, what have you learned since you just turned 27? So what have you learned in the past 6 years?
Yes, so I would like to talk about two great lessons that I learned over the past 6 years, 6 years or so. First one is, as an entrepreneur, you really need to have a realistic expectation and really don't be afraid to fail. We have all the nowadays we have all the media coverage, of the successful stories of Uber, Tesla, and Facebook. In fact, if you Google a list of unicorn startup, I mean, you type that into the Google and it will give you a full list of, these startups that went from nothing to billions of dollar value. So that really motivates people to entrepreneurship. But I really think, I see that in many of my friends, my classmates and colleagues, they all want to quit their job, stop whatever they're doing and become an entrepreneur. But really, we have to be realistic about the list of companies that we can see on medias, on Google's. They made up 1% of all the startups out there. You will never hear about that 99% of the startup that actually failed. So it's really important for everyone to understand that entrepreneurship is not easy. I personally watched an Elon Musk interview a while back, and I couldn't agree to everything he said. He basically said, when you start a company, you're extremely happy because you have this grand idea, a great vision, and even prior to starting this company, you start to have this imagination or vision of yourself being successful, being on the news, getting interviewed by different reporters and make, all the money in the world. However, once you actually started to run your business, this is exactly what he said. He said it felt like eating glasses. And I really agree because now you're running an actual business and all kinds of unpredicted problems surfaced and you have to solve all of them. Otherwise, like very quickly on the next day, your company could be on the verge of closing down. So usually a very high expectation means that you would be less prepared because you expect everything to go smoothly. You already, in your mind, you already think you will be successful. And most importantly, I would like to emphasize is when you have a very high expectation, if you happen to fail from some circumstances, you would have a very great disappointment, and that could really cause some damage to your confidence and really affect your next venture or your next company. Maybe it would eliminate your chance to succeed. So for me, as an example, when I started 6P.I.D, I had capital, although with a high interest rate. My father did provide me with capital. I had many great mentors and advisors that advises me, basically holding my hands and teaches me the game rules and how to properly execute certain plans. And on top of that, I was extremely lucky because the housing price in the Bay Area has been on the rocket ship for the past 5 years, certainly. So if I list everything down on a piece of paper and present that to any of my friends or classmates, they would think that there's really no chance for me to fail. To fail, my company would just, there's just no way. Everything's positive. However, there are quite a few instances where I would say 6 PID was on the verge of closing down. One example is at the end of 2016, two of my most important employees decided to quit the job simultaneously. So I at that time not only had to manage all the ongoing projects, and I was frantically searching and interviewing for the replacement because I simply could not handle all the workload myself. So I had a lot of sleepless nights because I set my expectation way too high. When I faced obstacles, I had great disappointments, and in my mind, there are many instances where I wanted to give up and close the company down and start maybe follow my parents' plans for my brothers. So you can see here the psychology effect is I really want to emphasize the importance on this. The only way for your startup to be successful is if you remain confident. And one way to keep your confidence up is to keep your expectation low. In that case, when you meet problems or obstacles, you can keep calm and solve the problem and not be defeated by the failure or the problems.
That's great advice, Leo. Let's just shift to angel investing. When did you become an angel investor and why?
Certainly, I actually got exposed to venture capital even before real estate. So in 2010, at that time I was 16 years old. My father was invited to Minneapolis for an angel investment opportunity. And my father decided to bring me as his translator. That experience really left a very deep impression on me. I still vividly remember the feeling today. I felt very honored to having the opportunity to learn about a world's cutting edge technology that I otherwise would never even hear of until, of course, when it comes up on the news 10 years later. Also, I had the opportunity to meet and talk to all these doctors and scientists from University of Minnesota that are probably among the smartest people in the world. My father did invest in the startup under my name, and this company contributed greatly during the COVID pandemic by developing point of care COVID testing kits. And that was the why I decided to become an angel investor initially. I'm able to basically exchange ideas and knowledge with all the greatest and most creative minds on the earth and get to learn all the newest ideas and technologies in the world. However, later on, I realized the most important reason is that being an angel investor gives me the opportunity to contribute to these new drugs, treatments, or technology that could potentially change or save many lives. For example, my grandmother died from muscular dystrophy 8 years ago. We watched her getting weaker and weaker and eventually passing away since there is no treatment for the disease. However, just last week, I committed to investing in a company founded by a brilliant team from our Hopkins community that could have potentially found the cure for this very disease. Although my contribution is incomparable to the great minds that come up with the treatment and make it into a reality, but at least I hope, through my small contribution, no one else in the future would need to watch their loved ones slowly passing away helplessly like I did. So yes, like you mentioned earlier, Bill, I mainly invest in projects from medtech, pharmaceutical, and TMT industry. I have looked at many projects over the years, but only invested in a few because of its risky nature. And I'm certainly a lot less aggressive when it comes to angel investing versus real estate development.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh, I'm currently enrolled in the full-time MBA program at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. First of all, I would like to give a quick shout out to my school. I chose Carey among all my other choices of business programs because I sensed a strong culture of encouraging entrepreneurship in the school. I've already met actually a few entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs in my program. And it is certainly fascinating to meet people with the same vision and goal in mind. Also, the program's heavy focus on healthcare and information technology fits my profile and goal perfectly. In addition, I was able to gain access to the vast Johns Hopkins network, especially the alumni community, and I have already gained numerous benefits from that. So to answer your question, Bill, post graduation, besides continuing my real estate business and looking at different venture capital projects in the States, I am planning to start utilizing my network in Asia and start to become more of an international business person. I can't guarantee where I will be or the state of myself or my business in 10 years, but I certainly want to continue with real estate development and venture capital for the rest of my life.
Leo, I really appreciate your time. It's great talking with you, and I know you have a bright future.
Thank you, Bill.